Got
Alrighty.
since my feet are going to be in view, I've got my space socks on today.
Look at you, all prepared. Alrighty, we are up on YouTube now. Welcome everybody. We are Jenna and Chris. We don't usually introduce ourselves. I am the outreach coordinator at the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada. Chris, would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Chris Vaughan. I'm a member of the Toronto Centre. I help out at the David Dunlap Observatory. I write for Sky News. I'm everywhere.
And Chris is a published author of a new book.
That's right. We can get into that. We'll get into
that. So today, feel free, as usual, for those of you who are joining in the chat, to let us know where you're from and where you're joining from. It's great to see everybody again. It's been a while. It's been a whole month. And we are back to our once every 2 weeks regular schedule starting this week. So we'll be back again on September 28th, 2 weeks from now. Today, we are going to be talking about space books and our favorites of the space books. Now, of course, that can mean a bunch of different things. Also, that explains why Chris has two cameras going, because Chris is better prepared than I am, and has a spot for just for his books for you to be able to see what we're looking at. We have a quiz. Actually, we'll let people join a little bit longer. So we're going to be talking about our favorite books to do with space, and when we space, we mean space science. So things like black holes and, in some cases, subatomic particles and relativity and that sort of stuff. And then also about astronomy. So actually observing, looking up at the stars, looking at constellations, that sort of stuff. So we'll be covering lots of different types of books and ages of books today. We'll have the list of all the books that we're talking about available at rask.ca/insidersguide, all one word, afterwards, for anybody who is interested in grabbing some of these titles.
Yeah, basically, it's kind of Chris's bookshelf on my side of things. So I've taken all the books off the shelf and I put them all around me on the floor here so I can show them to you. I also want to mention that I've had internet issues today in the neighborhood outside of the house. So I've got one stream coming in off my regular Rogers internet, and I've got a second stream coming in through my phone using my cell provider. So if the Rogers goes down, the phone should still work. So you're hearing me through my phone and I'm hearing you through my phone. So that's so far, I think it's belt and suspenders. I think we're going to be good.
I'm gonna kick some stuff off here with a very quick quiz about so for those of you who are in Zoom, you can answer these questions. What kind of book topics do you prefer when it comes to astronomy? Do you prefer books about astronomy like black holes and exoplanets or exploding stars? Do you prefer books about observing, like finding the Big Dipper or using telescopes? Or do you like books about space exploration history, so like going to the moon and sending rovers to Mars? Or do you prefer stories about constellations? Let us know what kind of books you like to read when it comes to astronomy. We will give you another 15 seconds or so to answer. And while answers not to influence the decisions at all, but Chris, what's your favorite?
Well, I like science fiction when I'm off duty, off the clock. But I really enjoy, I've got some really cool books about astronomy and observing that I've got today here. So I've got some great ones that I really enjoy reading through. I just found a new one on the moon that I'm really enjoying, an older book.
Ooh. Oh, you lost your video stream there. Just a heads up, Chris, of the phone must fall asleep. Anyway, I will end the poll. So if you haven't answered, you have 3, 2, 1. And we are coming out almost at a tie between books about astronomy and books about observing, which is great because those are the two that we are focusing on today. So we will have lots of options for you to read.
Cool.
Shall we get started?
Yeah, so I thought I would start off by winding the clock back many, many years and showing you the books that got me started. So this book called Find the Constellations by H.A. Rey. H.A. Rey is the same person that wrote Curious George, all the Curious George books. And my grandmother gave me this book when I was about 10 years old, 9 or 10 years old. And either I had the bug by then and she realized it, or this contributed to giving me the bug. But I was really excited to find this. Of course, it went missing for years, and in the old house, in the old homestead kind of thing. And then I discovered it recently. It's got a bit of water damage and things like that. But it's really a cool book. And what really engaged me at the time was all these little critters having their little side conversations about the different topics that were being discussed. And it was really fun. And you've got, so yeah, the illustrations were really charming, and the information was really fun. So that may have started it all for me. And then when I was into it for a while, I found this book, and this is called The Concise Guide in Color in Constellations. And you can see that the backs come off and everything else is well used. This was neat because it had constellation by constellation, main stars and main deep sky objects in it. And this is actually translated from Polish, and Antonin Ruckel of the Moon Atlas fame is a co-author on this book. So I just thought I would share my origin story by putting those on there. That's how I got started.
If any of you, Chris Baldock has already mentioned that they have that Constellations book. So if any of you have the books, or if you have favorite books from your childhood or any of the topics that we're covering, feel free to throw them in the chat. Yeah. Back to you, Chris. Sorry.
No problem. So I just thought I'd start off a little bit about some kids' books. I don't own a lot of kids' books about astronomy and space. Every now and again, I'll go to the Miko Toy Warehouse sales when they have those at the holiday time, and I'll stock up on a little stack of something that looks related to astronomy. And when I do star parties or planetarium gigs, I'll sometimes hand some of those out. But I don't really have a good supply of those right now. But I did make some notes of a couple. So Dr. Bruce Betts of the Planetary Society. So that's B-E-T-T-S is his last name, Betts. He's published a series of books for kids. One of them, let's see if I still have the picture here up and running. Let's see if I go to, see if I can share this. So he's got one on space exploration for kids. Well, I'm not going to bother right now. Space exploration for kids, first book of planets. He's got that. Emily Lakdawala, who used to be very active in the Planetary Society, used to publish annually her recommended list of books for the year. I think Jenna could probably put the link that I gave her in the chat. That's from 2019, but a lot of these books don't get too stale, so you can certainly go back and look at those. Then lo and behold, I found a new version, or a brand new edition of Find the Constellations by H.A. Rey. So this book, even though he's passed, the folks that published the book have been keeping it updated. So this is the second edition. It's updated, so it's got planet information going into the future. So this would be a great book to get somebody started, maybe in the, past the grade 3-4 stage, maybe just getting a telescope, getting started. This could be a great opportunity. And again, it's the same sort of things inside as I showed you before. So Find the Constellations is still around. There's actually a bigger version of this book. Hey. This one's for grown-ups. I think it's basically for grown-ups, but it's still got the whimsical style to it a little bit, not as much as the other one. But he essentially, his premise of this book is that the traditional way that we convey the stick figures of the constellations aren't always logical, aren't always the way they truly are. So he does them a different way. So for example, I don't know if you can see here, this is Canis Major, the big dog. So he's got it, he connects the lines so it looks more like a dog. And there's a few examples of that. So The Star is a New Way to See Them is another book in that same author's vein. Let's see. And then my friend Jenna and our friend John Reed, he has his series of books that are designed many cases to get beginners started. And we'll come back to the one we recently did, but 50 Things to See with a Telescope for Kids, he has put out. I don't own a copy. I don't know if you have one, Jenna, but we'll put the list in the chat. Yeah, we'll put the list.
I'm throwing out the names of these in the chat, and those are what you can search to purchase them. If I send them out, we do not have them on the Rask store. If we have them in the Rask store, I will send links.
All right, so that kind of covers the folks getting started, maybe for nieces, nephews, grandkids, things like that, to get them started. I thought I'd also switch horses a second here and just talk about Indigenous astronomy a little bit. Now, neither Jenna nor I are Indigenous, so we can't really, get into it too much. We hope we can get an Indigenous storyteller to join us at some point on Insider's Guide. But this is a fantastic little book. You can see it's quite thin, but it's full of really good information. And if you've ever used the star lore in Stellarium, this book is the complementary information to the Ojibwe sky culture that's in Stellarium. So the artwork that you can see here on the cover was created by Annette Lee and Carl Gauboy. And inside it's got a number of Indigenous star stories. And it's also got a really interesting discussion about terminology. So the names of the planets in their native dialects, the months of the year and things like that. So it's not a very expensive book. There's also, this is in the Rask store, right? Mm-hmm. There's also a map. You can actually buy a paper map that does this as well. So between this and Stellarium and the paper map, you'd have a really good start on the Ojibwe sky culture for Canadian viewers. There's also a counterpart to this for Dakota, Lakota, yeah, in the
and
US,
I believe Cree too. So I'll just send the link to this planet. It's a planisphere, so like a star finder or a star wheel. There's a link for that in the chat as well.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. Let's go to the moon next. So a number of rascals begrudge the moon, complain about the moon. I like the moon. The moon's easy to see from your driveway during COVID. You don't have to go to a dark site. You can see it wherever you are. And really, there's always something to discover on the moon. Jenna and John and Samantha did that terrific web series on observing the moon. And so John has his book again, 50 Things to See on the Moon, a first time stargazer's guide by John Reed. So that's a great one to look at. In terms of moon atlases, a lot of people these days use apps, but this is the one that's coveted by a lot of people. This is Antonin Ruckel's Atlas of the Moon. And I got this used. It's out of print right now, unfortunately. It used to be put out by Sky and Telescope, but it's just fantastic. So what it is it's based on his paintings, his annotated paintings of the moon. Oh, wow. And for each chart, he has a list of the features that are included in that chart, their sizes, a bit of information about where their names come from and so on. It's really conveniently laid out. So it uses about 76 tiles and they sweep west to east in strips across the moon. So you can sort of find, if you need to find something that's a little bit east of where you are, you just flip to the next page or backwards as you like. So it's really, really convenient. This one's actually, the coloration you can see is a little bit interesting. That's because it's designed to be used in red light. But there are more than cool. Yeah. So that's the Atlas of the Moon. Again, every now and again on the astronomy forums or Astrobicel or a place like that, somebody will put it up for sale, and I would grab it. I think it's a great book. I think people have been asking Sky and Telescope to bring it back for a while, but I'm not sure why they haven't. Maybe because of apps are taking over things. Maybe. This is a really cool book though, and it's in print now. It's available for everybody. It's the Cambridge Photographic Moon Atlas by Alan Chu, Wolfgang Pitch, Mario Weigand and Storm Dunlop. And unlike the Ruckel one, which is kind of regimented frames or sectors on the moon, this one actually uses areas of interest. So you can see that rather than a grid pattern, they just focus on different interesting areas of the moon and address them, usually in a 2-page spread. And again, you can take an area, it's got fantastic detailed photographs of the area, and it's always using different illuminations. So if you're viewing the moon at a particular phase and you want to know, maybe that's not the ideal phase, but maybe you want to look at it in a different form, this has got photographs generally of more than one sun illumination of that object. And it's got, again, some planetary physics about the moon and history and things like that. But because it's photographs, you can get super tremendous detail on these pictures that you don't get in the Ruckel paintings. So this is kind of a great book. I created a talk about observing the full moon, and I use this book a lot for that. So I was just going through each region of the moon, looking for the ones that were illuminated at full moon and seeing the kinds of features that are particularly impactful at a full moon. So it's a great book. And it's kind of a neat coffee table book as well for anybody that wants something that's both beautiful and informative.
A real quick pause, because a bunch of people are commenting on how great your socks are. So I'm sorry, hold on. I'm pinning and unpinning you. Go ahead and show your socks again on the iPhone. Look at those, folks. Where'd you get them, Chris?
Those are a gift.
Oh.
Yeah. My daughter and her husband now know that because I have the portable planetarium, and the portable planetarium is socks only, then I always have to have my sock game. Yeah. I always have everybody take their shoes off for the planetarium, just because it's a fabric, and I don't want boots or shoes to tear the fabric. So I have to have my sock game for that kind of thing.
Yeah, your sock game is on point. Well done.
Thank you very much. All right.
Anyway, sorry. Back to the moon.
No problem. We want to keep it fun. All right. What have we got next? So go ahead.
I was just going to say, I'm going to throw the link in the chat for John's other book, the first 50 Things to See on the Moon. I think you already mentioned it, but I'm a little late sending it out. Sorry about that, folks.
Yeah. Remember that it's John R-E-A-D, John Reed, like read a book. That's if you're going to search for his name, that's where you find that. All right. I thought I'd talk now about star atlases. And then as we get past the kind of more dry things, we'll get into some more fun variety of things. But star atlases are something that, again, some people love them. Some people prefer to use an app. But the benefit of the paper star atlas at the telescope is that you're not ruining your dark adaptation, right? Some people turn the brightness down on their phone or put red film on, and things like Sky Safari they don't quite work as well when you've got red film over them. But yeah, I still use them, but you may want to go with the star atlas. So there's a couple of ones that people highly recommend. I'm going to start basic and kind of up the game as we go here. So this is kind of a very popular standard, the Pocket Sky Atlas from Sky and Telescope. This was so popular, in fact, that Sky and Telescope brought out a larger version of this. So this would be kind of an iPad size, and they've also brought out a full kind of 50% bigger size of this book. This is fine. This has got stars and deep sky objects, basically labeled, if you can see these two well.
There we go, that's better.
Yeah. Down to magnitude about 7.5. So it's not going to be that helpful to compare what you're viewing in the eyepiece to the stars. But for using binoculars or navigating the sky or finding DSOs, this is really useful at this sort of level of detail. You can also see that there are, if I can find so it's got a guide as to what objects is what. You've got the star magnitude dots and the different types of stars. And it uses essentially a common a common scale for each chart. So I've got listed here, let me see if I have this. It's got 80 charts. Each chart is 40 degrees by 3 hours. You can see that there are 2 charts per spread. I have 2 complaints about this book, even though it's great. Complaint number 1 is that I find it hard to read with my eyesight the way it is. I like something that's a bit bigger. And the other thing is that the way the charts are arranged. Let's see if I can get you this page. You can see this. They're arranged by strips in right ascension, basically. So it starts at the north celestial pole and goes to the south celestial pole. So you'd have one chart, then a pair, and then a pair, then a pair, then a pair, then south. And then if you want to look at something east of where you're viewing right now, you've got to jump 10 pages ahead or 10 charts ahead to get into the next strips and so on. So that's okay. I guess that's one way of doing it. What I like is this other star atlas.
Oh.
And bear with me, I know this might seem a little bit strange, but this is the Cambridge Double Star Atlas. And the Cambridge atlases, there's a regular star atlas, there's a Herschel object star atlas, there's a double star atlas. I specifically bought the double star atlas because it has all the deep sky objects in it, essentially. Plus it has the double stars, plus it has the sky charts. So you're kind of getting the best of everything in the book. And as you can see already, it's a bigger book. So there's that. The charts are, there are only 30 sets of charts. Each one is 2 pages. So both of these 2 pages are chart 27, and they overlap. They butt join. So you get a big vast, patch of the sky that you're seeing on the chart. Each chart is, let's see, 40 degrees by 4 hours. Again, stars down to magnitude 7.6, but with all the other, deep sky objects and double stars mentioned. So I like that. The other thing that I really like about this book is that the charts are arranged in east-west strips. So if the object that you need is east of where you are in the sky, you just flip one page and you're there, and that keeps going. So it basically starts at the north celestial pole, and then it just winds around and then around and then around and then around.
Cool.
So I find that great. So if you were to say, viewing kind of the Orion part of the sky in the wintertime, you want Taurus, you want Gemini, it's just page forward, page back. It's very simple. Whereas in the other sky and telescope, you'd have to flip by 10s or something like that to find where you are. So that's the one I would recommend, is the double star atlas. And then if you really want to go crazy, you can go with Uuranometria 2000. So the Uuranometria 2000, you can see it's a heavy book. It's a big book. This has got, let's see, 250 charts for the Northern Hemisphere, and then another 250 for the Southern Hemisphere. Lots more detail, obviously. The magnitudes go down to 9.5, which means that you've got way more stars. But this would be the one that you'd have beside you at the eyepiece, because it's going to match more or less what you're seeing in the eyepiece. However, it doesn't account for the way your telescope optics flip the view, right? So if you have a Dobsonian telescope, that's all you need to do is turn it upside down. You're fine. But if you have a refractor, then you're mirror image, so it's not quite as convenient. The way this one's organized, let's see if I can find you the chart. It's kind of a spiral, starting at the North Pole and spiraling around. So it's more of the east-west idea. And you can see that there's lots of detail in the chart. Now, one thing I don't like about this book is that it doesn't connect the dots for the constellation lines. I find that a lot harder to navigate if I don't have the lines joined. But so this is an older version. There's now an all sky version where they merge the 2 volumes into one bigger book. So you can get that if you wanted to. So that's a Sirius star atlas. All right. I'll pause for a second. Any questions, any comments?
So far, so good. Hold on. Let me pin the version of you that is your face and not just your hands. Let's run a poll though for real, because we have another series of questions here. All of the books that, okay. All the questions that we have are about books today, obviously. We're going to take a little mental stretch and do a very quick poll. Do you prefer science fiction or nonfiction? We're not talking about science fiction today. We've already talked about science fiction. We may talk about it again. We'll never not talk about science fiction. But today we're focusing on the nonfiction books. So let's see where everyone's feelings are at. Not that us talking about nonfiction books today would sway anybody, but we're not using these stats for any official capacity. Chris, do you have a preference?
Well, as I said before, when I'm in for leisure time, I'd rather read science fiction than astronomy books. But some people are the other way. I was once in a class in physics class at U of T, and one of the young ladies in the class came up to the prof one day and she said, "I just love reading the textbook before bed. It's just delights me." And I just thought, "Are you crazy?" But anyway, that's the way she rolls.
Yeah, I mean, whatever floats your boat.
Yeah.
And it looks like that's actually sort of, yeah, this is, I'm sorry to both Chris and Jamie, who have both pointed out that this is too much of a dichotomy, and what if you like both of them? So I apologize. This may not be accurate, but generally speaking,
we should have had a third option, both. Yeah.
We should have said both, sorry. But generally speaking, people are preferring nonfiction here. So it is a good thing that you're in this webinar, because that is the focus this time around.
Fantastic.
Alrighty, next we are on to
what to look at.
What to look at. And here we get to profile Chris in his new book.
Do I have it here? Oh my goodness, I happen to have a copy.
Your phone has fallen asleep, just a heads up. Your phone needs to wake up.
Let's put this up.
There we go.
There we go. So our friend John Reed, several months ago, approached me and said that he had seen Jenna and I doing a Messier Marathon Insider's Guide stream, and he had been wanting to write a book about the Messier objects for some time, and would I like to help him with that? And I said, sure. So here's the result. 110 things to see with the telescope, Star Hopper's Guide to the Messier objects. Originally, he was thinking about emphasizing the marathon aspect, which we still have in here, but basically we decided to go with a seasonal approach. We ordered the objects by season. We color-coded the pages for each season. We ordered them not by M1 to M110, but by what object would you view first on an October evening, for example, and which one would you leave to last? And we kept, for each object, we've got places to log your observations, do a sketch. We have TELRAD circles. We made sure that the TELRAD circles were really, really accurate, so you could use those bullseyes to find the object. And then John was really, did a really great job of photographing each of the Messier objects and producing a same scale version of each one throughout the book. So basically the circle you see here would be the size of the full moon, 30 arc minutes. And then he inverted the image so that it's a bit easier to see the different objects. We've even got if you ever do a Messier marathon or do the Messier certificate through RASC, the hardest part is the Virgo cluster. And so what we did is we kind of created a step-by-step walking tour through the Messier to the Virgo cluster by starting at Markarian's chain, which is the arc of easy to find galaxies between Leo and Virgo. So yeah, so we've got 20 pages at the beginning of basic astronomy for beginners. So it's really geared towards anybody, either just beginning. Maybe you've got somebody young that just got a telescope and they're finished with the moon and planets. Now what? The Messiers are a great step to go next, right?
I'm gonna quickly shout out as well that RASC has an observing certificate for Messier objects. We've done online programs for Explore the Universe and Explore the Moon. And one of our slightly more advanced, there it is, RASC certification, woohoo. One of these slightly more advanced certifications is the Messier object certification. So the link for that is in the chat if anyone is interested in a new challenge for observing. March is a good time to do it, but you can get started anytime. And John and Chris's book is a great tool to have alongside you.
And just by the way, we didn't plan this. I didn't know I'd have that book in my hands when we decided to do this topic. So this just worked out nicely for it. Time for some other books. So this is a highly recommended book. I see a lot of veteran astronomers recommending this to people who are getting started. Turn Left at Orion by Guy Consolmagno and Don Davis. And what's neat about this book is that it's organized by season, and then within that season, different constellations, but different kind of types of objects inside that constellation. So if you're in Sagittarius, talks about the Trifid Nebula. It actually gives you a rating for how visible the objects are in various types of telescopes. Say I'm an 8-inch Dobsonian or an 80-millimeter refractor or binoculars. And what's really neat is that it's actually got sketches through various particular telescopes and then flipped to match what you'd see in the eyepiece. So it's designed to really let you complement what you're viewing to the eyepiece. You can see there's detailed information. You've got all sky charts or horizon sky charts. So this book would not cover everything there is to see in a particular constellation, but it's curating it for you. So it's picking out the things that you're most likely to want to see and what to expect, how they'll look, and that kind of thing. So there are also chapters in here about astronomy basics, how the sky moves, how magnitude works, all sorts of things. So a few years ago, I was approached about sort of tutoring some students privately for astronomy, and we never really got it going, but this is the book I would have used as the textbook, quote unquote textbook for that, because I knew it would cover all those basics really well, and it would also be something they could hold on to and use down the road when they got going. So that's Turn Left at Orion. Here's another cool little book. So this is kind of a self-published book by Peter Biren. This is recommended to me by Brian Charnock, past guest of Insider's Guide to the Galaxy, meteorite expert. And it's a nice spiral bound little book, and it really cuts to the chase. So it's got a constellation, it's got a sky chart, and then on the left, he lists the best things to view in that constellation, and he rates them for how good they are. He bolds a few that are particularly easy to see or best to see. He gives you the sky coordinates, the magnitudes. But he also, what's neat about this book is that he also includes things like star asterisms that you'd see in the telescope. There's one in Corvus that I really like. It's called the Stargate. It's basically a triangle inside another triangle. It's really neat. That's an asterism. He mentions carbon stars and double stars, and of course, deep sky objects, galaxies, nebulas, and so on. So objects in the heavens. For this one, you wouldn't, I don't think you could find this on an Amazon or something like that. You'd have to go to peterbiren.com. It's BIRREN, you can see there, and you can order it from him. There's also, I think he would also sell a PDF of this if you wanted to have it on a tablet or something like that. So whenever I'm wondering what to look at, I just flip this open and I see, oh, what did he think to look at? And it's a great inspiration. At the other end of the spectrum, we've got these tomes. So this is the Night Sky Observer's Guide. There are 3 volumes. So there's an autumn and winter, volume 2, see if I get the lights here, is summer and spring. And then there's volume 3, I think it's the Southern Hemisphere. There might even be a 4th volume, which has to do with galaxies. I can't remember off the top of my head. But what's great about these books, now, these books are published by a company called Wilman Bell Inc. And Wilman Bell Inc. unfortunately closed their doors during COVID, went out of business. But just a month or two ago, the American, the AAS, I think, I forget the name.
American Astronomical Society?
I think it might be the AAS, yeah, American Astronomical Society, announced that they've acquired Wilman Bell Inc. And in October, they're going to resume selling the books, which is fantastic.
Yay!
Because there were a few that I wanted that I never got. One of the ones I want to get is they put a fantastic book called the ARP, the Atlas of the ARP galaxies. ARP galaxies are the ones that are distorted or interacting.
Oh, cool.
It's a really cool book to look at galaxies with. But anyway, and I only have the 2 volumes of this, and I probably want to finish collecting the set because they're really cool. Now, what's inside?
Joanne also added that the 4th volume is The Glories of the Milky Way. That's what it is.
That's right. That's what it is. It's detailed tour through the Milky Way. So this book is, the authors of this book are veteran stargazers, astronomers. So it's made for the observer. It's organized by constellation. So you pick a constellation and see if I can find one here. So here's Canis Major. Starts with an overview, goes through the interesting stars, the primary stars in the constellation. You've got a sky chart. And again, with YouTube, we're not going to show pages too clearly for YouTube for too much detail. Then it lists all the neat variable stars, the double stars in the constellation, in that constellation. And then when you get past that, you get to the deep sky objects, and it's listed in order of NGC number or IC, the index catalog number. And what's great is that it actually describes how the object looks in different size telescopes. So for example, here it's an 8-inch telescope and then a bigger 12-inch telescope if it's a dim object. And it's got the coordinates where they are and classifications and things, and lots of sketches. So you can see how things should look in the eyepiece. So that's really cool. And detailed finder charts. So, and some astrophotos of selected objects. So this is this would be a great book to have if you were, say, limited to a particular constellation because of your sight lines and you wanted to really explore everything there was to see in that constellation. Then you could start with this, and it's pretty comprehensive. I think they've covered just about everything you'd want to see in a particular constellation. If you want to have a little more fun, like a more coffee table approach, is pick up Sue French's Deep Sky Wonders. These are reprinted. They've reprinted her columns from Sky and Telescope magazine. So it's basically organized by season, but then within that there's a theme. So she may be talking about Cygnus, for example, but she may have more than one column that dealt with Cygnus. So you'll see that there are more than one article on that. And there's be some small overlap in content, but basically it's the sort of thing you'd see in Sky and Telescope where she's touring you through a section of the sky and the best things to see, and sometimes more or less detail on different elements of that, like open clusters in, Origo or something like that. But it's really a neat book to scroll through. You can see that there's a mixture of astro images, sky charts. She lists the targets, summarizes the targets. So that's one that even if your spouse wasn't into astronomy, he or she might be willing to have that on the coffee table just because it's a cool book to have. So yeah, if you were interested in seeing what's up in a particular patch of the sky, you could head into here and look at a few of the articles and see, oh, maybe there's a little asterism that I didn't know about, or a carbon star, or a particular object. So that's a cool one. All right, I think that was it. Yeah, for that section. Anybody have any comments or questions, any of that?
So far, no questions on any of the books. How are we feeling about another quiz?
Sure.
That was a big section.
Sure.
I have a really important question for people. I also think that none of you can see me. That's okay. How do you like to read your books? Do you like real books, which includes hardcover or softcover? I combine the two. Do you prefer e-readers? Do you prefer reading them on a computer or a phone? Or do you prefer audiobooks? And again, sorry, this is a single choice.
That's a very apropos question, Jenna. I really like that you're asking this now. It's going to come up.
Is it? Because do you have an ebook coming up?
No. But
Okay.
it's going to be relevant. It's going to be relevant to one of our upcoming books here in a minute.
Perfect. Excellent. I planned this, everybody. We talked about it in advance.
Exactly. Me personally, so there are different times and different situations. I actually like to have, I have a library folder on my tablet and one on my computer with astronomy books and atlases that are PDFs in digital form. And I think those are great to have available, especially if you're in the field and you didn't bring a certain book. You may have it already on your tablet or something like that. But it's nice to be able to curl up, especially with this next set of books coming up. After you get in from observing, maybe put on the gas fireplace and have some coffee or a drink and page through the book. So
that's fair.
Yeah.
We're about to close this survey, so now's your last chance. 3, 2, 1. Somewhat predictably, okay, interesting. So Jamie has a good addition in the comments as well. Somewhat predictably, lots of people liking real books with a few people liking e-reader computers and saying audiobooks. I really like audiobooks, except I realize that probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense when you're looking for stars.
Not for astronomy. Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah. But Jamie did add that they like listening to Sky Safari while observing or doing astrophotography, listening to like the audio descriptions of it too.
Yep.
So fair points.
Oh, my phone went off again.
Yeah, your phone needs to wake up again. I'm going to add a pin and just put you two up there. All right, so now our next subject is, if I am correct, is this reference books now?
Reference books. Yeah, so reference books to me would be, so if I'm writing an article for Sky News and I want to find out about an object that I think would be worthy, I'll compare with what I observed about it, what's in my log books, but then I'll also go and take a look at what was maybe in the, mentioned in the Night Sky Observer's Guide or something like that. But then you get the books that you wouldn't really have in the field necessarily because they don't have sky charts and things like that. And there's a few really cool ones that I have on the list here. So this one, I think I bought this because I didn't need it per se, but I was looking for kind of like a Christmas present or something that I was looking for an astronomy book to pick up. And this was a real find, a real gem. I love this book. And you know what? He's Canadian, which is really cool as well. So it's the complete guide to the Herschel objects. He leads off with a history of the Herschel family, William and John and Caroline Herschel, which was fantastic, talking about all the telescopes that they built. And there's some examples of some of that kind of thing, which I thought was very readable, very engaging. And then for each constellation, much like the Night Sky Observer's Guide, for each constellation, he goes through an order and he lists the notes that Herschel made about an object, Herschel's classification, but then he also puts his observations into what he saw visually at the eyepiece. So he's got coordinates, types, distances, things like that, the odd astro image. Not so much sketching as the other book had. So it's not necessarily going to match. Oh, there is a few sketches here and there. You can see here. It is nice to have those now and again so people get a realistic impression of what they're going to see in the eyepiece. But so this is also one where if you have observed some targets and you were curious about other people's opinions, then you could head into here and see, did you see what he saw? Did you notice maybe a feature that he remarked on that maybe you want to check out on a second look, that kind of thing. So this is a neat one to have. And further to that, you've got these fantastic books. So these are kind of legendary. This is the Stephen J. O'Meara. He's columnist. He's written for Sky and Telescope and other magazines over the years. I really like his writing style, and he's written, I think, about 5 in this series called Deep Sky Companions. So try to get the latest editions. This is the 2nd edition. I made sure I did that when I picked it up. Well, I wouldn't read this before I went out observing because I think it would give too much away maybe. I like to be surprised by an object when I'm viewing it, but I like to come back later and then see what he said about it. And what's great about this book is that he goes through the Messiers one by one. He gives you the notes that Charles Messier made about the object, or perhaps one of Messier's contemporaries. He gives you an image. He gives you a finder chart. He describes the astrophysics behind the object, a bit of history about the science that's surrounded that object. And then he gives you his the method he uses to find it. So star hopping from star to star. And then he'll end up with his impressions. And in a lot of cases, he'll have, I don't know if I can see find any of his sketches here. He'll sketch what he saw in the eyepiece and tell you, oh, I think it looks like a spider or something like that. So that's kind of cool. So the first one's on the Messier objects. The second one is on the Caldwell objects. So the Caldwell objects are another 110 objects, but they're all sky from the North Celestial Pole to the South Celestial Pole. So from Canada, we can only see about 2/3 of them, maybe 70 of them. So we did that. And then once he had done those 2 books, he decided to keep going, and he did one called The Hidden Treasures, which is huge. It's about twice as thick as this book. And it's another 110 or so objects again, but this time things that are largely overlooked. And what's cool about those is that between the Caldwell objects and the Hidden Treasures book, you're getting into a lot of the RASC's finest NGC list targets that Alan Dyer put together. So if you've done the finest NGC observing certificate program, then you'll be able to read up on a lot of those topics, a lot of those objects in these books. And then finally, not quite final, but he put a 4th one out called The Secret Deep. Oh, and by the way, the Hidden Treasures book, he kind of used a theme of pirate treasure. And so if you're in Stellarium and you're seeing the name of a deep sky object, the octopus cluster or the shoe buckle or the Tweedledum and Tweedledee, some of these sort of whimsical names in Stellarium, they're from him. They're from Stephen O'Meara.
No way.
Taken the nicknames that he coined in some of his books and put them in Stellarium.
That's so cool.
Some of those proper names are traditional, but a lot of them are modern from Stephen O'Meara. So that's kind of fun to find that out. And again, when you get into the Hidden Treasures and the Secret Deep books, there's a lot more of those little, sketch where it made it look like a unicorn. He thinks it's the unicorn cluster. So these are great for your après observing, curled up by the fire. That's a great one. And just to finish up the section, so I got this book when it went into the book sale bin at the Richmond Hill Public Library a number of years ago. Go to your library and check out the astronomy books, because if you don't, they won't put them in, they won't keep them in circulation. They won't keep them in their collection. So every now and again, visit the library and take advantage of their astronomy books, or there won't be astronomy books at the library, just my little PSA. So the Uuranometria book that I showed, the big thick blue one, I got those 2 volumes and this the same day at the library for like $1 each in the used bin.
Oh man.
And this has turned out to be a real hidden gem, because much like the others where that describes the individual objects, so these chaps, again, Lugenbuhl and Skiff, go constellation by constellation and then NGC by NGC, and they describe visually what the object looks like to them, in some cases with different sizes of telescopes. And so it's also a great one for, did I see everything there was to see? Did I disagree or agree? That kind of thing. So that's a cool one. And this is, I know it looks like kind of an old book, but it is still available. I think it's still available on Amazon and other places. So it doesn't look very glamorous. It's not a coffee table, but lots of interesting information in the book. All right, so now we get to the, I'm just going to scroll down my list here a little bit, to the one that was pertinent to your question.
Ooh.
The one after this one. So if you want to get to know everything there is about astronomy, Canada has some of the best astronomy writers going, and this one is The Venerable Night Watch by Terence Dickinson. He's a fantastic writer. I'm sure everybody knows that from reading his material, his books and his articles in Sky News and places like that. But the Night Watch, you can see it's spiral bound. It's designed for more the beginner. So he's got sky charts showing you the highlights, what to look at. It's also got, information about how to pick a telescope, how they work, all sky charts, things like that. I think there might even be there's viewing the sun, using eclipse glasses and viewing the moon, things like that. These books get updated every now and again. So this is a bit of an older issue. I can't remember the year of this one, but the one that's available now is got a more modern cover. If you look for Night Watch on Amazon or something, you'll see a more updated cover than this one, so the newer version. So that's a great book to have.
You can also order it at rask.ca or secure.rask.ca/store. The link is in the chat. That is back in the day when I worked at a science center. That was the book that we used in the planetarium because it is a great reference book. If anyone ever has questions about space, there's something in it to answer. And so big shout out to Night Watch. I really like it. Yeah.
So, and a lot of us watching have been in the astronomy game for a while now. And so we kind of know what we're doing and we've learned along the way. But, we do encounter young people or people who are just maybe retiring and getting into astronomy that, how do I learn about astronomy, all the different aspects? How can we help them avoid the pitfalls that we've all dealt with, like, forgetting dew shields and things like that? So yeah, what books do we recommend for things like that? So Night Watch would be a great one. And the next one, got to mention, this is brand new. This is the Backyard Astronomer's Guide, 400 pages, Terence Dickinson and Alan Dyer. It's just been released. It's brand new. And this is after a 10-year gap between the 3rd edition and the 4th edition. So I just wrote a review for Sky News, so that's going to be highlighted in Sky News coming up the next issue in your mailbox. But this is encyclopedic. So the writing is amazing. It's so comprehensive. I read it cover to cover, which I probably wouldn't have done if I weren't reviewing it. But I'm so glad I did because I learned so much. Things like even what to look at for in sky phenomenon in the daytime or in twilight, sundogs and glories and rainbows and all the different aspects of that. And then, what shows up at twilight. And if you're reviewing a planet, if you're reviewing Jupiter, for example, it talks about limb darkening. It talks about, they talk about how when each moon of Jupiter is most observable when it's transiting the planet. So if a moon is a darker color naturally, it's more visible when it's transiting a band rather than a belt, that kind of thing. So it's really, really neat. Talks about things like, the visibility of Saturn's moon, Iapetus, when it's east and west of the planet. And then what's amazing, though, is that Alan, I think Alan in particular, has gone through and he has reviewed, like no tomorrow, equipment, all up to date with prices and the features of each one. He's done eyepiece shootouts where he compares the different designs and models of the eyepieces. So you've got the prices and the sharpness and the field of view and all the various aspects that are important in that respect. He compares different mounts, SCTs versus refractors versus reflectors, maxitovs. It's all in here. So there's a big section on hardware and equipment. And so if somebody's, in the market for buying a telescope or binoculars or eyepieces, this is a great way to go. There's sections on how to set up, Celestron or Skywatcher or Meade go-to telescopes, the different aspects of that. Then they get into the observing. So you've got these fantastic tours of sections of the moon where they take you through all the things to look for in that section of the moon. My only complaint was got to the end and thought, I could have used more, but it's not meant to be. It's trying to satisfy a number of different requirements, right, all at once. So, so there's a moon tour, there are sky tours, constellations, deep sky objects, and so on. And then at the end, it's astroimaging. So step by step on the astroimaging equipment, what settings to use for cameras for different types of images. There's even a image processing tutorial in the back of the book as well. So it would probably not be for a kid, but maybe if that child is kind of ready for it. But certainly if you've got, an adult who's retired and ready to jump into astronomy, wants to do imaging or something like that, you tell them, read this book and you'll save yourself a lot of time and grief. You'll learn a lot. You'll know, and you'll be able to hit the ground running. But it's not going to be one you're going to want to have at the eyepiece because it's really big. But take notes or, have a table next to you or something. I don't know if there's a PDF version of it, but that's a fantastic book. I really recommend this one to learn a lot. And for somebody that wants something a little more portable, this Peterson Field Guide by Jay Pasakoff. He's a well-known astronomer, very well known. He's an eclipse chaser. This is another one of these general purpose books covering a number of different topics. Not so much equipment, I don't think, but definitely what to look at in the sky and lots of information, and a lot more portable than the big, heavy encyclopedic version, but that's a great one too. Highly recommend it. Right. Okay. Other things to just, general astronomy reading that I mentioned that I don't have copies of on hand. Bad Astronomy by Phil Plait. Phil Plait is an astronomer in the US. The book's called Bad Astronomy, but he really has little essays on the different misconceptions about astronomy, things like you can stand an egg on its tip at the equinox and things like that, or if you sit at the bottom of a well.
That's a thing?
It's a thing people sometimes say, or that if you sit at the bottom of a well, could you see a bright star right overhead, that kind of thing. So were the moon landings faked, and he goes through all the science and the physics around that. That's just a tiny sample of the things that he covers, but it's a really great book. Again, it doesn't look, really glamorous cover-wise, but once you start reading it, you really keep going. It's a really great book. And then I recommended one called The Sun's Heartbeat, which is a fairly recent book about the sun, how the sun works, by Bob Berman. So I thought that was a great book. So I found helpful for doing outreach for solar observing and that kind of thing, to be able to explain the physics behind sunspots and prominences and so on. Right. Want to take a turn, Jenna? Talk about a few?
Sure, I'll take a turn and talk about RASC specific stuff. Because we do have a bunch of RASC publications that are available with membership and are available on our website and that sort of stuff. And so for me, as someone who is not spectacular at observing and also is a relative beginner, I use, even if I weren't an expert, this book is useful, the Observer's Handbook, which I think probably almost everyone here would know about. It's our annual publication that covers everything that's happening that year. For me, I pretty much just use this section, which is the section where it talks about what's happening and all the really important that folks have been so kind to curate for me, because I'm lazy, and for all of you, anyone else who's lazy suits my lazy. It also has a nice picture of the moon, and then it has just an incredible amount of detail about everything else that you could possibly want, in a way that might take a little bit of extra focus to understand. So that chart was the sunrise and sunset times for the year, for example, in different locations.
Yeah, there are lots of things that you wouldn't use, but lots of good stuff too.
Yeah, there's a ton of really great information, and honestly, every time that I think that I will know something for the year, I always double check in the Observer's Handbook. It's sort of my go-to. So that if you're a RASC member, you will be receiving your copy later into October, maybe early November. And if you are not a RASC member, you can pre-order it at the website that I just sent out. It does come with membership, so I recommend. And I will also mention as well our Explore the Universe book, which is sort of like a very short, simple handbook that tells you how to observe. Do you have that one, Chris? Oh, hold on. Sorry, I have to add a pin. Wait, there it is. Thank you for having a copy. So we have these. This is sort of like a very basic guide on how to use your hands to measure the sky, what the moon's doing, that sort of stuff. Some really, really basic level. And there's some stuff about eclipses. That also comes in your RASC membership when you become a new member. So I'll get to the Night Sky Almanac in 1 second. So if you're not a new member, if you're not a member already, you can become a new member and get that Explore the Universe guide. And now onto the Night Sky Almanac, which is a sort of nice, happy little in between those two almost. So it's a brighter, more colorful, more engaging and shorter book than the Observer's Handbook. So it's a little bit more friendly to beginners. And it's written by our very own Nicole Mortellaro, who's also a CBC reporter, has little sky charts and highlights and what's going on in that month. And the 2022 version is available for pre-order as well. So another good observing tool that's available on our store. Okay, that's it for RASC publications. Can I use this time to talk about the other stuff that I like?
Sure.
Can I lead us into cosmology and physics?
Sure.
Okay, did I say everything? Or actually, no, did you want to add the beginner's observing guide? Because I don't know that much about the beginner's observing guide.
I didn't bring it into the room with me, but it falls into the category it's thinner than it's thinner than this, but it's more of the general purpose learning about astronomy at a more basic level. So it'd be another good way to get an intro to astronomy from that. Yeah.
So it is I just sent the link for that as well.
Yeah.
But for my all-time favorite, I'm trying to write out the name of it at the same time as talking. My all-time favorite book, we're jumping into cosmology and physics, and this is my all-time favorite book about cosmology and physics. It is called The Universe in Your Hand by Christophe Galifard. If you've talked to me about books before, I've recommended this book to you probably. It's my favorite. He does a great job of storytelling. So Christophe Galifard is a physicist who worked with Stephen Hawking, or Stephen Hawking mentored. And he has a really good way of sort of putting concepts into relatable stories and telling it from a relatable perspective. So the first half of the book is all about the big stuff. So like the universe and relativity and how the speed of light works and that sort of stuff. And the second half is all the small scale. And just the way that he tells the stories in it, it's all scientifically accurate, but the way that he puts you into a perspective of like traveling along a photon is just really, really cool. So I'm a big fan of that.
Cool.
That's my main cosmology and physics one, although I do have one more that I like.
Yes.
Which is, yay, thank you. Which is Neutrino by Frank Close. If anyone is interested, if you're the kind of person who reads books about subatomic particles, it's a good one. It goes over, I think I particularly like it because it goes over the history of the discovery. Well, it sort of follows the path of like theoretical physics. So the theoretical prediction of the neutrino to exist, and into how they actually proved that it does exist, and different types of neutrinos how they figured out what types of neutrinos were out there. So it tells the story of like how science works in the context of subatomic particles. And it gets into details about like the different reactors and detectors that they use to find it, which is interesting in its own right. But just the way that it kind of idea of like how physics goes. I thought was really, really cool. And just so that you have visuals in your head for what these books are, that's The Universe in Your Hand there.
Oh, great.
And then that's a different one, which I forgot to recommend. It's a graphic novel about rockets.
Cool.
And also Neutrino by Frank Close is there as well.
Cool.
Okay. Was
Well,
that fast enough?
I just finished reading this book.
Ooh, oh, hey, Katie Mack.
And it's amazing. It's fantastic. You know what? She's so funny. It's really entertaining. It's not a very heavy slog. She makes it very relatable, very understandable. I mean, there are a couple chapters you might want to say, oh, I think I should read a bit, skim that again just to really get it. But I found her really engaging and really, really fun. And so I can highly recommend this one for, if anybody that likes physics. This is a great one to get maybe for a gift for somebody this year. Really good. If you're interested in, if I wasn't into an astronomer, I probably would have been an archaeologist. That's my other passion. And I really enjoyed this book by Sarah Parchak, Archaeology from Space, how she's using basically satellite imagery to map archaeological sites, monitor them. You can monitor them, against looters and things like that. So this is really cool. And it's very biographical in a sense. So I really enjoyed this one. I recommended this one. And another oldie but goodie, not physics again per se, is Andrew Chaikin's A Man on the Moon, where he goes into the story of the Apollo missions. Really good book. Excellent book. So those are a few. If you like the history of astronomy, really highly recommend the books by Dava Sobol, particularly Longitude. Longitude is the story about how clocks were invented and perfected and allowed us to be able to determine our longitude on the Earth. Because latitude's easy, it's just the elevation of Polaris, but longitude is tough. So we had to figure out how to tell time in order to determine our longitude at sea before GPS. That's an excellent book. And the Glass Universe. And it's The Glass Universe, how the ladies of the Harvard Observatory took the measure of the stars. So our own Canada's Helen Sawyer Hogg, who was an astronomer at the David Dunlop Observatory, got her start at the Harvard Observatory as one of the lady computers. Computers were people at those times. They were doing calculations and taking measurements. So the Harvard University Observatory was taking plates of the sky, calculating or determining stellar classifications, stellar spectra. Really a fantastic book, full of women in STEM and the huge impact they had. Annie Jump Cannon, Henrietta Swan Leavitt, Cecilia Gaboshkin, Helen Sawyer Hogg, they're all in there. They're all highlighted. All these names you may have heard. They really get their due in that book. So I highly recommend that book. I think that was kind of all I was going to say. I suggest that you can also hunt online for some books, online ebooks that NASA puts out. So Chris Gaynor has a book about the Hubble Space Telescope that was sponsored by NASA. So that's I think it's a free download from the NASA website. So I actually gave Jenna a link to ebook directory that has a few, and then there was an online books website as well that I found. Some of the links were dead that didn't work, but a number of the books are there. So for example, if you're interested in the moon's geology, there have been some books put out, sort of PDFs or ebooks put out on the moon's geology that are really good. So take advantage of those as well. So I think that's all the books I had. Is that enough? I think so.
I think that's enough. That's quite a few books. I'm trying to think if I had any extras hanging around inside of my brain. But you have a few others, like A Short History of Nearly Everything by Bill Brighton.
Yep.
And then there's Starlight Nights, The Adventure of a Stargazer.
Yeah, some of the memoirs are really nice. So David Levy has a few books. So David Levy has his own memoir that he's written, but he's prolific. He's written many, many books. He wrote a biography of Clyde Tombaugh, who discovered Pluto, which I read. I really enjoyed that book. And then Starlight Nights by Leslie Peltier is one that's anybody that's, you know, had a little telescope or saved up for a telescope when they were a kid would appreciate Leslie Peltier's memoir, Starlight Nights. So that's another great one as well.
I'll also throw out, I haven't actually read this. I have it, but I haven't read it. And it was on your list, Chris, Chasing New Horizons, which is Alan Stern and David Grinspan, which is about the New Horizons mission to Pluto.
Yeah.
I've heard it's good.
It's a thriller. It's a page turner. Really high recommended. Yeah. It's a great book.
Cool. So that one's now in the chat too. And a note from Lisa who was saying that they already have, or at least already has, placed an order for a few of these on Amazon. And there's nothing like the joy of getting new books. I just love new books.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, that's all. That's kind of all the books I was going to talk about today. I'm certainly happy to hear of anybody else's recommendations. I haven't got the chat open, so I haven't seen them, but
yeah, if you have any books that you love that we have not talked about, throw them in the chat. We'll read out some of the titles. The other group that I wanted to shout out for anyone who's in the Toronto area or happy to order online is the Gorilla Store, which is run by Graham Greene, and who I went to when I was like, I need recommendations for space books. And he has a ton of books there. For those of you who remember, I don't remember the name of the store before it was Gorilla Store. But he has a whole bunch of extra stuff. Like he has all these LEDs and maker type materials in his store, along with a whole bunch of books. So if you're looking, that store has a lot of like kids books in it. So if you're looking for good kids books, that's a good resource as well.
Yeah, don't forget that that some of the astronomy equipment vendors also sell books as well. So if you wanted to avoid the, you know, the big cloud stores and go to somebody bricks and mortar retailer, local retailer, you could contact a local astronomy shop and they'll have the number of these books.
Also an excellent option. I think that's, I have two last polls that I'm going to run. One, we'll ignore the other one. This is for multiple people, but especially Kim Hay, who said that she likes to read books or likes to read magazines on her e-reader. So how do you like to learn about space? I have as many options to fit in, which means there's other category. I apologize. How do you like to learn about space? You can choose as many as you want. You're not restricted to just one this time. You can choose, we've got TV shows, documentaries, miniseries, or limited series, which in my opinion is a great one. YouTube, if you want to vote for us, you can also vote YouTube if you want to. Books, magazines, podcasts, radio, Coursera are online courses. I guess we're also an online course, aren't we, Chris? From members, was that?
I said, yes, we're kind of a hybrid, aren't we?
We're a little bit of a hybrid. And also we're the last category, which is from friends, family, and other RASC members. Right. Also a good option.
Yeah, I saw Lisa's comment just there about For All Mankind from Tanya Harrison. So, there are a number of science communicators that have books out. Sarah Seeger has a book out, a number of books out. Please buy the books that our friends put out. That's great.
Yeah, we love to support our friends and other science communicators. All right, I'm gonna give you all 5 more seconds to vote on your favorites. Get them in there. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, we have a good spread. Radio being the least popular, and podcasts being low down too. But with lots of books, documentaries, TV shows, magazines, all sorts of great other stuff. I don't even know what I would have chosen, Chris. I don't know. Can you choose out of that list what you like to learn from?
My answer is not on the list.
What's your answer?
The best way to learn about astronomy is to give a talk on something. Then you'll learn all about it, and you'll use various resources to do that. But I've learned so much by doing these sessions with you, Jenna. It's fantastic. I love it.
And same, you've taught me so much, and I agree that having to teach other people how to do stuff is a great way to teach yourself.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Thank you so
Alrighty.
much, everyone, for joining us today. We're going to wrap up a little on the early side, okay, Chris?
Sure.
All right, sounds good. We'll see you all for our next session, which is in 2 weeks, and we're going to be talking about the life cycle of stars. So we will see you then. We're back to our regular schedule of every other Tuesday. So we will continue to see you all online.
Yeah, and don't hesitate to send us your ideas. If there's something we haven't talked about that you'd like to see us cover, let us know, and we'll cover it.
Thanks everyone for joining. It's great to see you all again, especially after such a long break. It's lovely to hang out with you, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Yeah, so keep looking down at books and keep looking up at the sky.
And let's hope for some better weather, because it's been kind of a sad summer.